Food waste. Food waste refers to food appropriate for human consumption being discarded, whether or not after it is kept beyond its expiry date or left to spoil. Often this is because food has spoiled, but it can be for other reasons such as oversupply due to markets or individual consumer shopping or eating habits. Food waste is an important environmental issue since food production is a major contributor of greenhouse gas emissions. When food is disposed in landfills to rot, it also becomes a significant source of methane, which is a potent greenhouse gas with direct consequences for global warming. At the same time, food waste in landfill releases toxic substances in the soil with negative consequences for groundwater, since households are the most prominent contributors for food waste, and given that COVID-19 has had significant impact on hunger and food insecurity. It is important to know whether households have increased or decreased food waste during the pandemic. In this era, I thought that COVID-19 has significantly affected people's food purchasing and consumption habits. Fears of disruption in the food supply chain have caused an increase in the quantity and type of food bought by households. However, increases in food purchases could give a rise to food waste with negative ramification for the environment in terms of greenhouse emissions and groundwater pollution.
Malaysia is blessed with a melting pot of delicious and healthy foods. The Malaysian food and beverage industry has an estimated gross national income of 1,500 billion ringgit in the year 2019. Despite of the massive contribution, food waste continue to rise tremendously. The question remains, why is it so?
When we ask, why has food waste increased over the past years? And we often think deeper and deeper to find more reasonable answers to the question that we have asked. But do we realize the reason why food waste has been increasing over the past years is actually more close to home? One of the reasons can be sought after simply by looking into our refrigerators. Most of us have one problem in common, and that is we hoard so much of food. And what happens when we do so? All of these foods have an expiry date, and it can expire without us being noticed. And after all, it ends up in the garbage bag simply because we do not use it in time. Another reason is simply because we tend to cook so much of food. This is because we would love to make sure that the raw food materials purchased are used up in time. But what happens when the food we cook for our family members, or even if restaurant owners prepare them for their customers, and these individuals do not use them in time? Well, the answer is simple. These cooked food do end up in a garbage bag, and by nightfall they find their eternal resting place in landfills. We may think that those problems, those reasons, are small in magnitude, but the effects that they have towards the environment is simply but devastatingly large.
Today, there is a lot of environmental problems related to food waste. Firstly, food waste heavily contributes to the emission of greenhouse gases. Research states that 49% of waste in landfills is made up of organic food waste. Malaysians waste about 60,688 tons of food per day, an amount that can easily feed around 2.2 million people 3 times a day. And the total amount of food waste can suddenly fill up 60 of the Twin Towers. When organic waste decomposes, carbon dioxide and methane gas are created. Both gases are greenhouse gases which contribute to global warming and climate change. The food produced and then let goes to waste is estimated to be equivalent to 3.3 billion tons of greenhouse gas. Research also states that food waste is the third biggest emitter of green gases. About 6% to 8% of all human-caused greenhouse gas emission could be reduced if we stop wasting food. Secondly, spread of infectious disease. However, either due to resource crunch or inefficient infrastructure, not all of these waste get collected and transported to the final dump sites. If at this stage the management and disposal is improperly done, it can cause serious impact on health and problems to the surrounding environment. Waste that is not properly managed, especially food waste from households and the community, are a serious health hazard and lead to the spread of infectious disease. An attendant waste laying around attracts flies, rats, and other creatures that in turn spread disease. Normally, it is the wet waste that decompose and release a bad odor. This leads to unhygienic conditions and thereby to a rise in the health problems.
So, how to reduce food waste? Firstly, avoid buying too much. Taking a couple of shorter trips to the grocery store each week rather one longer trip. Secondly, think twice before throwing food away. For instance, many greens and vegetables may slightly soften or wilt when they are just past ripe. They still may make excellent additions to soups, smoothies, or baked dishes. Thirdly, always make a shopping list. Buying foods that are already in the home can ultimately become another source of waste. Fourth, store food correctly. Perishable items such as fruits and vegetables each have their best way to store to avoid spoilage. Always transfer leftovers from open cans into a suitable container. And lastly, understand the dates on food. Many people assume these dates are expiration dates and throw out perfectly edible food. Remember, while tags and labels on foods may give a general idea for how fresh a product is.
Now, take an action. Appreciate and respect food to avoid more environmental problems. We hope you find this documentary useful and hopefully will motivate you to reduce your food waste at home. Having all this in mind, it is important to note that sometimes some waste would still be inevitable. However, our main goal is to provide encouragement and support for Malaysians to make our best effort in reducing such waste. After all, we are all inhabitants of this beautiful planet. Thank you.